Welcome to Merritt Street Media. Tonight on Dr. Phil Primetime, my one-hour interview with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, unedited, commercial-free from Israel at perhaps the most critical time in the conflict. What is the war between Israel and Hamas doing to the United States?
There has to be a way to stop the fighting and the killing.
Will it spill from campuses into other aspects of our lives? When will it end? The exclusive interview on Dr. Phil Primetime. Tonight, I stand in the city of Jerusalem, the holiest place in the world, sacred to Judaism, Christianity, and much later in history to Islam. This is also center stage for a war started when the terrorist organization Hamas perpetrated a brutal massacre against primarily Israeli citizens. This murderous attack saw the most Jews slaughtered in a single day since the Holocaust. Approximately 1,200 killed, including many women, children, and elderly, all unarmed, as well as over 4,000 wounded. Approximately 250 civilians were kidnapped and, as evidenced by video, beaten, brutalized, and thrown into inhospitable imprisonment, to say the least. It's believed that there are still 132 hostages currently in Hamas captivity, although it is unknown how many are actually alive. This war is between Israel, the Jewish homeland, and Hamas, a terrorist group that has taken over the territory known as the Gaza Strip, which Israel gave up in a goodwill effort for peace in 2005. Occupied by Palestinians, many of whom willingly harbor the terrorists or are at least sympathizers. Others are clearly trapped in a bad situation. This unprovoked October 7th genocide and Israel's predictable response is also dividing the world, as evidenced by the out-of-control protests seen on too many college campuses across America. I was present on the UCLA campus recently speaking with Jewish students and Israeli Jewish students throughout the day and for the takedown of the pro-Palestinian encampment late into the night. Masquerading as exercising their right to free speech, these UCLA protesters, along with others on campuses across the nation, have resorted to threats, intimidation, and physical assault to suppress pro-Israeli counterparts. Going even deeper into the roots of this story dominating the world stage, tonight I sit down for a no-holds-barred, in-depth interview with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, unedited and commercial-free from Jerusalem. An interview taking place at perhaps the most critical time in this conflict, a conflict with implications the world over. Prime Minister, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. Welcome to Israel.
Well, I'm so proud to be here, and I've been spending a lot of time talking about Israel, so to be here and to have the honor of sitting with you is amazing. How do you think the Israeli people are holding up 7 months into this conflict?
They're holding up incredibly well. They're very strong. They're united. They understand that we face a genocidal enemy that we have to defeat in order to assure our future. It's not only Hamas monsters that we face. We face the whole Iran terror axis that openly declares its goal to destroy everything you see around it, to destroy us, to effect another Holocaust, and that's not going to happen. We have the strength of ages here.
Well, I want to talk about that and talk about Iran in a minute, but when we talk about Hamas, we're clearly talking about a terror group. This is not a government, it's a militia, a terrorist group.
Yes, there are also terror governments like Iran, but this is a smaller version. In its charter, it says, kill every Jew on earth, everywhere you find him. If a Jew hides behind a bush, find him, kill him. It's actually said that in the charter.
I've read the charter, and it does say exactly that.
Exactly that. And these people are particularly brutal and savage. I mean, what they did on October 7th is incredible. They murdered innocent men and women. They raped women and beheaded them. They burned babies alive. They took hostages, men, women, little boys, babies. And then they broadcasted it live, GoPro. They were proud of their, of their savagery. I have to say that this is the worst savagery that the Jewish people experienced since the Holocaust.
Well, there were certainly more Jews killed that day than since the Holocaust in one day.
In one day, you're right.
And which is stunning to me how short the memory is for what happened that day in the media in terms of what's going on. And I want to change that. I want to remind people, and I don't want to be sensationalistic about it, but I want to remind people the brutality of what happened that day. And along those lines, I have a question. Are the Palestinian people at large complicit in this? How do you tell the difference between Hamas and Palestinians in the Gaza Strip? Because Hamas doesn't wear a uniform. They hide among the civilians. They hide in schools. They hide in churches. They wear civilian clothes, which is a violation of the Geneva Convention. Are Palestinians complicit in this, or are they just hiding among them? I know they're doing that, but are Palestinians some complicit in this?
You have actually both conditions, because we went into buildings, residential buildings, where these terrorists, hide, and where they shoot from. They go to hospitals, schools, residential areas. But when we went into these residential areas, we found tablets, and in the tablet you have, you open the tablet and you see a picture of Adolf Hitler. And then in another building you see a picture, in another apartment you see text of Hitler's Mein Kampf, which is the work that itemized and laid the plan for the destruction of the 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. So they're immersed in this. They educate their children to this unfathomable hatred of Jews, to this murderous mentality, and many comply with it. And those who don't, they're used as human shields anyway. They use them as human shields, and they target civilians, and they hide behind their civilians, their own civilians. They target ours, hide behind theirs. That is a double war crime. And of course, this makes Israel's task so much more difficult. No army has faced in the world the task we have, to have 35,000, 40,000 terrorists, armed terrorists, in a dense urban area, 50 meters sometimes above ground, 50 meters below ground. They've taken hostages. They say they'll murder them. They have. And then you have to wean them out. No armies face that. Not in Fallujah, not in Mosul. I asked a great military historian in West Point. He said the only parallel that I can give is the battle for Manila, where U.S. forces there were 17,000 Japanese troops, there were 1,000 hostages, there were underground tunnels, the Manila sewage system. It was smaller than what we have in Gaza. But the Americans fought and fought bravely and eventually defeated the Japanese. But they ended up killing 100,000 civilians, not because MacArthur, who commanded them, wanted to. He didn't want to.
Right.
But because when you hide in dense civilian areas, that's what happens. Israel has not had this kind of ratio. We've had a much smaller ratio because we take unbelievable efforts, pamphlets, phone calls, text messages to the people, give up the element of surprise, and we say, please leave the area because we're going to go after the terrorists. If you are ensconced with terrorists, leave the areas. And that's why the ratio, actually, contrary to everything you read in the mainstream media, the ratio of civilians killed to terrorists killed in that Gaza war is perhaps the smallest it's been in any urban battle in modern history.
Well, how do you handle the criticism and maintain your confidence in your decisions? Because we've seen the media swing. After October 7th, people were appalled at what happened. And I've seen video that most of the world hasn't seen of what happened that day in concert with the IDF, provided me that so I could speak firsthand, not just hearsay, but firsthand of what I had seen. And so they brought me under careful security, footage that I've seen. But most of the world hasn't seen that, and the media has swung around, and you've been criticized for civilian deaths because they hide among them how do you maintain the confidence of your decisions and not question your decision making and the confidence in those decisions when there's so much criticism from some of the media and world leaders?
Well, look, I say to the international community, you can't, on the one hand, speak of Israel's right to exercise self-defense, to protect itself, and self-defense always involves both offense and defense. You can't talk about Israel's right of self-defense and then oppose Israel using it. You can't say we agree that Hamas has to be destroyed and then oppose Israel when it sets out to destroy Hamas. You can't hold the Israeli army to standards of avoiding civilian casualties that no army is held to in the world, when actually Israel is doing everything that no other army has done to avoid civilian casualties. You can't do that. So, you have to say, are we going to succumb to their hypocrisy? Are we going to basically remain defenseless and not destroy the Hamas terrorist army there? Because if we do not destroy them, if we leave them alone, they'll come back. They'll emerge from the tunnels, they'll take over Gaza again, and they'll do what they promised to do. They said, we'll do October 7th, this enormous massacre, again and again and again. So we have no choice.
Well, you speak to world leaders. I know you behind closed doors. You have private conversations. Have you spoken to a world leader that does not agree that Hamas has to be taken down? First, that they're a terrorist group and that they have to be taken down. Is there a world leader that you've spoken to that does not agree with that?
They agree with it. Many of them agree with it privately, and then when they're faced with the pressure of all this propaganda, all this madness in the campuses and in various capitals of the West, they begin to fray, some of them. But I don't fray. I have to do what we have to do to protect ourselves and to make sure that these atrocities are not repeated. People should know what these atrocities were. I went a few days after the massacre. I went to one of the communities right next to the Gaza Strip where these monsters entered. They found there a dark room, and they saw a cluster of forms in the darkness. And when they lit the room, they found a family burned to death, crouched like this. You have the mother and the father trying to protect their two little children, and the grandfather on top of them, all burnt. There was these monsters, when they came into the homes, one of the mothers wanted to hide their children, like Anne Frank, in the attic. So there was a secret attic, and these savages came in, killed the parents, found the latch where these two little children were hiding with terror in their eyes, and they came in and they slaughtered them. This is savagery on an unimaginable scale, and they vow to repeat it again and again. And I ask world leaders, what would you do? Let me ask you, what would America do? Dr. Phil, here's the proportion, okay? It's as if you had 30 9/11s in one day. As if you had 40,000 Americans butchered, 10,000 Americans held hostage, and they promised to do it again and again. What do you think America would do?
Well, we know what the president said that time. He said, "Let's roll. Let's go get the bad."
Well, we know what you did after Pearl Harbor.
Right.
We know what you did after 9/11, and you know that you took action because you had to roll back this kind of attack on you. Well, we do too. The difference is, of course, that this is not an attack thousands of miles away from our homes. This is an attack which is a 50-minute ride from here, from Jerusalem.
What do you say when, I've been very outspoken about what's happened on these campuses. I'm shocked. I say it's just, they're fostering intellectual rot. They are not teaching critical thinking among these young people. And what do you say when they characterize what Hamas did as resistance, not as an invasion?
Well, Hamas openly declares its goal to wipe out everything you see around here, to kill every man, woman, and child in Israel, to destroy the state. That's not resistance. That's naked, brutal aggression. That's their doctrine. Iran is saying the same thing. Our goal is to destroy Israel. We're the small Satan, by the way. Their goal is to destroy you. You're the big Satan. We're just standing in their way, and they're right. We're not merely protecting ourselves. We are. But in so doing, we're protecting all of free civilization, all of Western culture. They want to erase it. They want to tear it out. So what I always feel is that we can't kowtow to these fashions. And what is happening on American campuses and American cities, you got, first of all, you have a lot of ignorant people there who's, I'm sorry to say, whose sense of history at best goes back to breakfast, not even that. Okay, they don't have the faintest clue what Hamas is. You know, I saw Gays for Gaza. You hear that?
I've seen the banner.
Yeah, if you're gay and you're in Gaza, you're going to be shot right through the back of your head.
What I've said is march that banner into Gaza.
Right.
And see
or
how far
women for Gaza. Look at the state of women there. They're chattel. They talk about from the river to the sea. Here's the river. The river is right there, the Jordan River.
Right.
The sea is a few miles from here. That's Israel. When they say river, from the river to the sea, that's wipe out the state of Israel.
Yeah.
They're supporting genocide. Now, this is a sorry state of American higher education, including in schools where I went to. I went to one of them. You know, when the president of a university is asked, well, what would you say if somebody calls for the genocide of Jews? And they say it depends on the context. No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't. But it tells you that there's a deep rot, as you say, and a bankruptcy there. And unfortunately, it's translated to these people. But they're also, a lot of these people are also manipulated. They don't even understand that they're being organized systemically by groups that are not merely opposed to Israel. You look at what they're doing. They burnt, I saw this yesterday, amazing. They burned American flags in one campus. In another campus, I think in North Carolina or South Carolina, I'm not sure which, they tore down the American flag, raised the Palestinian flag, while they're chanting death to Israel, death to America. And then something happened. American students took down the Palestinian flag, raised the American flag, and protected it.
Right.
And I was deeply moved by that.
Yes, well,
that emphasizes, Dr. Phil, what I'm trying to say here. It's not merely our battle. It's your battle. It's the battle of democracies. It's the battle of civilization against barbarism. And we're on the front line, and we're not going to give up.
It is our battle, and we don't want you to give up. And I want to say very clearly to everyone watching this, everyone in Israel that is watching this and around the world, that what you're seeing on these campuses is not reflective of the vast majority of American people. These are the shrill voices. This is the tyranny of the fringe that is hijacking a narrative, and they may be getting the camera because of their extremism and getting the microphone, but the vast majority of American people, and a lot of these are my audience, don't agree with that. They stand strong behind Israel. They recognize that you are our ally and that this will not stop with Israeli Jews. It will not stop with American Jews. It will then become Westerners, and that we're all in this together. And I've said loud and long, you know who your friends are when you see who's coming in the door when everybody else is going out, and America needs to come in the door here when everybody else is going out. And most of Americans, that vast majority of the 70% in the middle, feel exactly that way and stand strong behind Israel. And they've said, what do you expect when you sit down with the Prime Minister? And I said, well, listen, don't let the suit fool you. This gentleman has been in the IDF twice, been 5 years the first time, injured multiple times, correct? You were back in 73 for the second time, and you lost your brother at Entebbe. So sorry for that. He was the only one killed because he was the last one on the plane, right?
He was first to lead his men in this rescue mission of hostages, by the way.
Right.
Held by Palestinian and German terrorists in Uganda. And he commanded the rescue force that liberated 103 hostages. Unfortunately,
And it went
there was
very
only
well.
one. It was successful, but there was only one.
It was just him.
Military casualty, and that was him. He led the force. He went first, so he fell first.
And then you headed up the Anti-Terror Institute in his name in 1978. So you know the players,
Oh, yeah.
is my point. You've been in the military, and then you know America because you did come and study at MIT
Yes.
and got your architecture degree and management studies as well as a master's degree. So you know America.
Oh, yeah.
You know what's there, and you know the players here. And is it true that you are the youngest prime minister?
Not now.
Not now.
I've been around a long time.
Yeah.
But yes, I was elected when I was 46, which
Yeah.
is still the youngest, but
And
Say
and
the
the longest serving.
yes.
So, and that's what I mean when I say you know the players here.
I know also our Arab neighbors, and we have quite a few who are, I've made 4 peace deals with the help of the United States, with the help of the President Trump and his team. We expanded the circle of peace from Jordan, which is right behind these hills, and Egypt, to include 4 countries, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco and Sudan. And I know that many of these leaders, even though they won't say so publicly, would like to see us defeat Hamas because they understand that not only does Hamas and Iran that backs it want to destroy Israel and are targeting America, they're targeting them too. So they're sort of in between a rock and a hard place. They don't always say it. But I think the future of peace in the Middle East depends on this victory. Because if they're victorious, or if they're not defeated, which is the same thing, then there's no hope for the moderates. There's no hope for the Western allies. There's no hope for the bearer of our common values here, which is Israel. So we have to win for ourselves, but also for civilization.
Well, trade hats with me for a minute here and look at the psychology of this. What did Hamas hope to gain on October 7th? They cannot realistically expect that they're going to wipe out the state of Israel or all the Jews in Israel. They would if they could, but they can't. Mm-hmm. You could, but you won't wipe out
the population, right?
The entire population.
No, we don't do that.
So you could, but you won't. They would, but they can't. So what do they expect to do? What do they hope to gain on October 7th?
Well, you're a student of the human soul, and you are a psychologist. So you know the emergence of cults. This is a death cult. It inculcates the desire for murder, for death, the glorification of murder and death. That's what they do. We value life; they value death. So they teach their children, their teens, their people, that the greatest thing that they can do is murder Jews and Israelis. And to do that, it's an uncontrollable urge. You know that human behavior is sometimes it's rational, but often it's guided by irrational impulses that dominate a group, that dominate a nation. It could happen. It happened in the Holocaust. It's exactly what happened. Right. Hitler took over this thing, inculcated German youth and inculcated the entire people of Germany with this extraordinary hatred, began with the Jews, this anti-Semitism, and then exploded to the entire world. And by any rational calculation, they would lose if they figured it out from the start. But they did it anyway. Here, there's an attempt, as you said, the goal is the same goal, the annihilation of the Jews. The capability is not the capability. Because 40 years ago, or 75 years ago, in the Holocaust, we were absolutely defenseless. So the Jewish people went up in flames, in the flames of the Auschwitz gas chamber. Now, we're facing an enemy that wants to achieve exactly the same goal, but now we can defend ourselves. We have the Israeli army, we have our brave soldiers, unbelievably brave. By the way, men and women, unbelievably brave, so we can push them back. The difference is not in intent. The difference is in capability. And that's why we're committed to defend ourselves. Because if we don't, then there are other forces around us. Hezbollah, that's in an Iranian proxy in Lebanon, not very far from here. The Houthis in Yemen, militias, Shiite, extreme Shiite radicals in Iraq and in Syria. If we don't win here, that noose of death will surround us. So we know we have to win here, as we know that we have to hold back Iran's plans to achieve nuclear weapons. These are our two greatest goals.
You know, when I looked at all of the video that I saw Hamas pushing out, there was a disproportionate number of videos with them violating Israeli women. Disproportionate number. It was like the message they wanted to send was, you can't protect your women. Like we want to insult you at every possible level. Is that just psychological warfare on their part, trying to send the message that it is the worst possible message? It was disproportionate how much they showed of that over and over again, which is the ultimate in cowardice in what they're showing, but it seems like it was intentional.
Well, it was, but it was coupled even, as I said, with the beheading of the women they raped, which is, you think about that. What is this monstrosity? And they're proud of it. I think that the interesting question I'd ask Dr. Phil is, where are all the women's organizations? Where are they? Why don't they speak up? How could they face this brutality and just be quiet and maybe issue a perfunctory statement when they're forced to? But this is, the whole attitude to Israel here is absurd, because yes, we've killed about 14,000 terrorists. Unfortunately, because of the fact that they use a human shield, they're a slightly bigger number, about 16,000 civilians that were killed in the places where the terrorists won't let them leave. Hamas stops them at gunpoint, because for us, every civilian is a tragedy. Every civilian death is a tragedy. For them, every civilian death is a strategy. So when you look at the numbers around us, in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, millions of people were killed, Muslims. Millions were uprooted from their homes. Where were the protests? Where are the demonstrations on U.S. campuses? Where is it? And the answer is, it's nowhere, because it's not directed at what we do. It's directed at who we are. It's an anti-Semitic explosion that threatens all of civilization.
And why is that, in your opinion? It's anti-Semitic activity has gone up 360% in America since October 7th, and it was already high before October 7th, and it's gone up 360%. Why? How do you...
Because I think it's a fusion of radical Islam and the ultra-anarchist left. It's fusing together. The only thing they agree on is that Israel has to be destroyed and America has to be destroyed. And that I think is something that, you're right, is rejected by the mainstream Americans. By the way, the polls bear you out. I mean, I see this tracking poll by the Harvard-Harris tracking group, polling group, and they show this. And they show 80% of Americans, when you ask them, do you favor in this conflict Israel or Hamas, 80% say Israel, 20% say Hamas. It hasn't budged by a percent. It's just steady. And of course, you wouldn't know that because 90% of the coverage in the media is negative. I think by and large the American people understand, actually they understand what the terrorists say, or what these Hamas and Iran say about us. They say Israel is a small America. We are you and you are us. Now that's why they hate us both. And in many ways, I think the majority of Americans across most of the political divide understand this. And I'm grateful for that support, obviously.
Let's talk about the hostages. You've said on many occasions, and when you've talked about the Palestinian deaths of civilians, I read people. My job is to read people. I've looked at the empathy in your face and heard the empathy in your words. And I've never seen anyone warn, we're getting ready to attack here. Millions of leaflets, text messages, phone calls, announcements. I've never seen anybody go to that length to protect a civilian population. It's unprecedented in the history of war. But you have gone to that lengths to protect. People seem to not pay much attention to that. But you have said that your goals are get the hostages back, eliminate Hamas, and protect against this happening again, Hamas rising their head up again in the future. Have those goals changed at all since the beginning?
No. We've destroyed about 20 battalions of the Hamas's 24 terrorist battalions. We have another 4 to go. They're in Rafah. And that's why we want to go into Rafah, because we can't leave them there. Basically, what they're trying to do is extort, blackmail us to leave Gaza, leave them in place, these battalions, and leave their leadership in place. And then they go in and take over Gaza again and do it again. They'll rape, they'll kidnap hostages, and they'll murder again and again and again. So we don't want that. That's why we have to achieve victory. And that means that we have to destroy all these battalions, which we will. We face very strong opposition to that, but we're going to overcome it. The second thing is releasing the hostages. We released up to now about more than half, and I'm committed to getting every last one. I just met the wife and daughter of one of the hostages, and your heart goes out to them, because you know the suffering that the hostages undergo and the suffering that the families are undergoing, not knowing what will happen to their loved ones. And so we'll do everything we can to get them back. I'm committed to that.
Well, I've met with some of the hostage families today, and of course that's their number one priority, is getting them back. Some of them were held for a while, released, and they have family members still being held, and they want to know if they're going to get them back. I mean, they're dying every day because they were there for a while and know what the treatment is, and they're so focused on getting them back. Are the heads, the strength of Hamas focused in Rafah now?
Yes.
These aren't just any battalions, or these
are the remaining battalions. But it's just imagine what would happen if the Allies went into Germany after the horrors that the Nazi regime did after its attack on Britain and all the other things that we saw, the conquest of Europe. So now they start rolling them back. They go into Germany, but they don't complete the job. They leave a quarter or 20% of the German army intact, of the Nazi army. They don't go into Berlin. They don't finish the job. You know, history would be different. Nobody believes that that could be done. But when people are telling us, don't go into Rafah, that's what they're telling us. Leave them intact. And then the thing repeats itself again and again. So I think right-minded people, rational-minded people understand that we don't have a choice. But there's strong opposition. I've said in the Holocaust memorial service that we had the other day, I said in the Holocaust we stood alone, but we were defenseless. And today, if Israel has to stand alone, we'll stand alone. But we also know we're not alone, because we have so many decent people everywhere who do support us, who do understand the truth. And we will defeat our enemies, and we will secure our future.
There was a headline in an American newspaper today that said "betrayed," and it had a picture of President Biden and a picture of you. And it talked about President Biden saying he was not going to release armament that was committed, 1,800, 2,000-pound bombs, 1,700, 500-pound bombs, if in fact you went into Rafah. And so the headline was "betrayed." And then in an interview on CNN, he said, I'm not going to do that, because they're using these bombs to, quote, go after population centers. It's just wrong. And I don't know if that's what he meant to say or not say, but you're not using bombs to go after population centers. You're using bombs to go after Hamas.
That's right. Who's hiding.
Sometimes they're hiding in population centers.
But we are doing everything we can to let the people leave, and with amazing efforts. But I think also that this is precision weapons. So, in fact, if you want to avoid civilian casualties, you need these weapons rather than imprecise weaponry. But I think beyond that, look, I've known Joe Biden for many years, so 40 years and more. We often had our agreements, but we've had our disagreements. We've been able to overcome them. I hope we can overcome them now, but we will do what we have to do to protect our country, and that means protect our future. And that means we will defeat Hamas, including in Rafah. We have no other choice.
Well, these leaders that you're talking to that behind the scenes agree, but do they agree that Hamas has to be stopped now and completely 100% eradicated?
Some of them do, yes.
Some don't?
Well, some of them openly say that when they talk to. They don't openly say that in the public sphere, but they openly say it to us. They say if you don't destroy Hamas, that means that the Iranian Axis will have a victory, and we're next. And in many ways, all our free societies are next, because if Israel is pushed not to destroy Hamas, because of this tactic of using human shields or other considerations, then every democracy will be imperiled. So, I've said we'll fight if necessary. I've said we'll fight with our fingernails. I assure you, Dr. Phil, we have more than fingernails.
Well,
and we will be victorious.
Clearly. And there are some people, including some Israeli people, that want an explanation for how October 7th happened. And some have given explanations, some in the military, some from the political side. Are they owed an explanation? Have you given an explanation to the people of your point of view?
I think we're going to have to give a thorough explanation, and I think we're going to have a thorough examination once the war ends of exactly what happened, how it happened, and who made it happen. That's something that you have to do. But I think right now our goal is one, to achieve victory. We cannot, there's no substitute for victory. There is no substitute. We can get into this discussion, and we will, but right now we have to win.
Was there a military failure here? Was there a political failure?
There were failures, obviously. First of all, government. The government's first responsibility is to protect the people. That's the ultimate enveloping responsibility, and the people weren't protected. We have to admit that.
Do you hold yourself to that standard, that you failed in some way?
I hold myself and everyone on this. I think we have to examine how it happened. What was the intelligence failure? What was the military failure? We can delve into it, but I think the important thing right now is to make sure that we don't have another failure, because the greatest failure would be, we've recovered from this attack. After this horrible murder, we went right into the counterattack. Now the question is, our greatest failure will be if we don't complete it. If we allow these murderers to be there and to get control of Gaza again, that will be inexcusable. And I'm focused right now on achieving this victory.
If there are 3 or 4 battalions left, and I have no doubt that you will overcome those 3 or 4 battalions, or however many are left, I have no doubt that your resolve is to the core and that they will be wiped out. What happens to Palestine, the Gaza Strip, the day they're gone?
I think we'll have to assure continuous demilitarization, because even if you destroy the terrorist army, you can have individual terrorists left. We have to root them out constantly. We'll probably have to have some kind of civilian government, civilian administration by Gazans who are not committed to our destruction, possibly, I think, with the aid of the the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and other countries that I think want to see stability and peace. But we're going to have Israel continually root out terrorists, because I don't see anyone coming in to do that right now. Frankly, I mean, if I would, I'd love to, because I'd love to see that, but I don't see it. So we'll continue to take action against the remnants of the terrorist army.
But you'll immediately start to alleviate the humanitarian crisis when you can.
We're doing it now. We're flooding Gaza with humanitarian help.
How do you keep it from being stolen? Is it because you've backed them all into one area?
No, a lot of it is there's looting by Hamas and others, but we've seen the price of food plummet because of the trucks that we're putting in. We're putting hundreds of trucks each day into Gaza, even though we know that Hamas will be looting quite a bit of it. But the important thing is to do what we can to avoid a humanitarian catastrophe by giving food and medicine and water, and at the same time to let out the Palestinian population from the areas that will be battle zone. And the thing that's blocking that is Hamas at gunpoint that tells them, you stay in the places where we're going to fight. We tell them leave, they tell them stay. And if they try to leave, they shoot them. But overwhelmingly, most of them left, and that's why we don't have the number of casualties that you had in Mosul or in Fallujah, or the proportion, or in Manila.
What do you say?
They could leave.
What do you say to this rhetoric from the ICC that contemplate warrants for your arrest for war crimes? How do you even respond to that?
I think it's absurd. It's a travesty. I didn't see them go after the Ayatollahs in Iran. I didn't see them go after Bashar Assad here, who butchered his people. I didn't see them go after other war criminals. To take Israel, a democratic country that uses the highest standards of military conduct, a standard that no army has matched in history, and to put its leaders and its commanders and its soldiers on trial for war crimes is to make a mockery of the whole idea of international law.
Well, you're not under their jurisdiction anyway, but if you even read their charter, they say that they cannot intercede where a country has its own self-policing.
Yes,
which clearly Israel does at the highest standard.
I think we have the most independent judiciary on the planet.
Of course.
Okay, so it's absurd in any way you look
So they violate their own charter by even talking about it.
That's exactly right.
So it seems to me, let me tell you, there's a lot of conversation among the senators in the U.S. that would not stand for that to occur. That's why I say I want Israeli people who may read about this to know that the vast majority of Americans stand behind you, they stand behind Israel, they stand behind eliminating Hamas, and they recognize that what's being peddled in the press is not the reality. Most of the people understand that, but they don't control the press that's being put out there, which is why I wanted to do this interview. I wanted to get this said so people understand the truth and that you and I can have an open exchange about this.
Well, I welcome the fact that you're doing this, because I think what we expect from decent people everywhere is to stand up for the truth, stand up for our common values, which are under terrific assault. Don't be cowed by the propaganda. Don't be swept away by these mobs on the campuses. Stand up. And 10 days after Hitler came to power in 1933, the Oxford Student Union in Britain said that they resolved that they will not fight for king and country, okay? And you know what happened. And obviously that kind of attitude would have doomed Western civilization. Britain would have lost, the West would have lost, Nazism would have triumphed. We face the new Nazis. We're doing it on behalf of ourselves, but also on behalf of our common civilization, our common future. I know that many people in America who are listening to us now understand this, and I want to thank them. If I look at the camera, I want to thank you, all of you, for standing up with Israel. Stand up for the truth, stand with Israel. When you're doing that, you're standing up for America.
Absolutely, we're standing up for America. Now, your wife and I would want to know that clearly this is traumatizing to the people of Israel, not just those that lost people on October 7th, but the entire country. Palestinians that have lost people in this. Is there a plan to help heal these scars once victory is at hand, and there's a plan to try to restore some sort of order in the Gaza Strip? Is there a plan to try to help heal those scars that everybody is under?
I think two things. You mentioned my wife, who's a child psychologist, and she's been dealing with these families of hostages and also our bereaved soldiers. You know, we've lost hundreds of soldiers who fought bravely and fell in Gaza. And, you know, it requires a continuous effort of assistance and treatment because their souls are scarred. But at the same time, we also think about the reconstruction of Gaza once we eliminate these terrorist thugs who are controlling it. Basically, they've hijacked Gaza. They've, you know, they kill anybody who just raises even the possibility of opposing them. They just wipe them all, put a bullet in the back of their heads. So, yes, there is a different future. It can be achieved, but that different future goes through one word: victory. And unfortunately, I have to go back to managing the war. So I'm going to, again, thank you for coming here. I want to point out that we're looking at the city of David. That's the original Jerusalem, which is there nestled between those hills. And this is where the Jewish people established our capital 3,000 years ago. So we've been here a long time, and we intend to stay.
Yeah, and I'm so moved by seeing all of this, and I think people should know that there's an Arab population living right here.
It's a village right here.
Right here in this village.
These are the houses you see here, next to the Jewish houses right here.
And that's something that is so amazing about Israel, that you are so inclusive and so diverse in everything here, and people, I think, don't realize that. And as I've driven through the city since I've been here, hostage posters are everywhere. This isn't off the radar at all, and it's your number one priority of getting these hostages back.
We'll get them out. Dr. Phil, thank you.
Prime Minister, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. It means a lot, and America is paying attention to this. Don't listen to just the shrill voices from the fringe. We're behind you.
Thank you. And thank you, America.
Thank you.
Picture, please.
Please.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you. I've been an admirer for many years.
Well, thank you, sir.
You know, it's called common sense, but common sense isn't that common. It's uncommon.
Yes.
You have an uncommon common sense.
Well, I've written about that, and
How
about we trade? How about we trade? How's that?
Okay.
Just need a few more with the food, please, Prime Minister.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
John?
Good job, brother.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Well, he makes it easy.
Beautiful. Loved it. Very proud of you guys.
Angie, can I see you for just a second? They'll be snapping. Thank you so much. Prime Minister, this is Angie Krause. She's been with me for 25 years and put all of this together. She's a Jewish woman, and
She's giving me the best view in town.
thanks so much.
Toda Rabah.
One more. Stand next to Dr. Phil. Let's slide
Stand
over
on this
here,
side.
guys. Just
How's
kind of.
that?
There you
Right here.
go.
Okay, you and John together. John,
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to run to.
I know you're in a hurry. I will sign my book and get it to your people so you don't have to
Oh,
wait for
thank
me,
you.
because I know you're in a hurry.
Thank you.
I'll get it to you.
Thank you. Sure.
Quickly
One
shoot.
more.
Quick. Prime Minister has some prime ministering to do.
last time is Rami.
We got it here.
It was a true honor to sit down with Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. I appreciate the time he took to speak to me and to tell me the truth about the horrors of what is really happening. In the coming days, we're going behind the images that are seared in so many minds. I will be visiting the Nova Festival site where you've seen video of young people being taken away by terrorists on motorbikes and bodies of young women wearing flowers in their hair, strewn on the ground after being mowed down in a hail of bullets as they ran for their lives. All they wanted was peace, but their spirits stand for hope. I will also travel to a kibbutz where families were destroyed, parents and children witnessed each other being mutilated, tortured, raped, and murdered. We all need to see these places to bear witness to the truth so the unfathomable evil that was perpetrated upon Jews is never allowed to happen again anywhere in the world. I will also be sitting down one-on-one for very delicate interviews with families of hostages still in captivity, and some who were kidnapped, subsequently released, but still have husbands being held in the most brutal of conditions. Edon Alexander, 19, Sagi Dekel Hin, 35, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, 23, Omar Nutra, 22, Keith Siegel, 64. Thank you for watching, and thank you for caring. Good night.